Thank you, Bree. And I just want to make a point that in rural areas, we often have early intervention providers working out of their cars, driving from school to home, and they're often sole proprietors. And when we lose them, we're losing the service because we know that children are not getting services because no one's filling that gap because they're obviously not going to start a business and do this type of work if they see that there's such a hurdle in getting paid. And I was at a meeting where one woman stood up and said, I'm quitting this work because I have to feed my kids and I have to find a job where I can do that. So it's very frustrating for the providers. I'd like to introduce Kelly Fagan, speech language pathologist and executive director of UNY EIP.
I'm a speech language pathologist. I've been providing services for the past 19 years as a speech language pathologist in the early intervention program. I also am here as an individual provider, but I represent the United New York Early Intervention Provider Group started by Leslie Gruber that represents providers in every county of this state. So my passion and my words here today are representative of providers from all across our state today. I have worked in the past 19 years as a speech-language pathologist helping infants and toddlers with autism, feeding disorders, and other developmental delays. My goal has always been to get children ready to succeed in kindergarten and support and strengthen families so that they are empowered to help their children be successful throughout their lives. This past year, we've seen big changes to the early intervention program enacted by the current budget as a means of mandate relief for counties. In an effort to relieve some of the financial and administrative burden on the counties, the state proposed changes to the reimbursement and funding stream of the EI program and moved to have the state system go through the state fiscal agent as of April 1st, 2013. Prior to this date, providers used to send in their paperwork to counties who would verify it and pay providers. And then the counties would get reimbursement from either Medicaid or private insurance programs. The state moved to the new system April 1st of this year, before having the state fiscal agent and system in place. They announced the state fiscal agent on April 22nd, 2013, and they have been building the program as they go. They did not have a system in place. They did not pilot a program to see if it would work, and they did not communicate to families or to insurance providers about this change. When you fail to plan, you plan to fail. And that is what's happening here. As an independent provider in rural upstate New York, I feel like a violinist on the Titanic. As I see the effects this changeover has had in the past 6 months on the early intervention system. Independent providers have continued to provide services diligently without being paid. For the past 6 months, but they cannot continue to operate like this anymore. The State Bureau of Early Intervention and the Department of Health did not have a viable working system in place when they switched over the reimbursement system on April 21st. Providers have been burdened not only financially from the lack of payment, but also administratively, as the state took the responsibility for billing and following up with the various insurance companies and Medicaid away from the counties to save them from the administration burden. And instead of taking on that role with the state fiscal agent put in place, they put it on providers. Individual providers are physical therapists, occupational therapists, speech-language pathologists, and special educators, highly trained in their fields, but they're not insurance examiners. Now, after 6 months, many insurance providers, small agency and large agencies, are no longer providing early intervention services. It's a matter of survival. They are getting into the lifeboats and rowing away. They are not being paid and cannot devote the resources to the exhaustive process of dealing with the 2 online billing systems, the insurance denials that are due to lack of setting up the program correctly, and the huge administrative burden it takes to try and track down claims and see where they are in the system. We are providers of early intervention. We want to serve the infants and children that need our services. The infants that are being discharged from the neonatal intensive care unit today, the toddlers just getting the diagnosis of autism, spinal bifida, or Down syndrome. As I said before, I feel like a violinist on the Titanic as I witness what this is doing to the early intervention program. I have resisted stepping off the ship because it breaks my heart to think of what's going to become of the infants and toddlers who are just getting diagnosed today. We need a rescue boat. And I would like to thank Senator Tkaczyk and everybody who's joined here today for recognizing this is a problem for our state, for our children, for our school districts, and for our taxpayers. If we do not act early for these children, their difficulties will continue and worsen. Governor Mario Cuomo began the early intervention program on September 17, 1992, signing the early intervention bill into law. Now, this early intervention bill must save the program, and we hope with the helps of the senators and the assemblymen who can join together to help save the early intervention, that his son, Andrew Cuomo, will use this as a life preserver to save the early intervention program.
Thank you, Kelly, for helping to explain what's occurred over the past year regarding this program. I'd now like to have Chris Traver from the Interagency Council of Developmental Disabilities Agencies to say a few words. Chris?
Good afternoon. My name is Christopher Traver. I'm the Associate Executive Director for Children's Services for the Interagency Council for Developmental Disability Agencies. We're a membership organization of 140 voluntary nonprofit providers to provide services to individuals with intellectual and developmental disabilities and their families in New York City, Rockland, Westchester, Long Island, and we have associate members in other parts of the state. Our membership operates early intervention, preschool, school-age services, family support services, as well as residences, clinics, employment services, and they serve approximately 100,000 children and adults. On behalf of the IAC and the early intervention providers, I'd like to thank Senator Tkaczyk for introducing Senate Bill 5938 and to offer our support for the legislation. The IAC has always supported the goal of having private insurance companies pay their fair share for the cost of early intervention services. This bill achieves that goal and removes the responsibility for seeking payment for these services from the early intervention providers. Early intervention providers are experts at working with young children. They do not possess the expertise or financial resources to go after private insurance companies to seek reimbursement for services they've already provided. The current system for billing and claiming places tremendous burdens on the early intervention providers, both administratively and fiscally. Over the past few months, our providers have faced significant financial challenges caused by the current system of billing and claiming and the lack of third-party reimbursement for services they've already provided. Many providers have still only received a small percentage of the total revenue owed to them by third-party insurance providers. We recognize that New York State Department of Health has attempted to address some of these concerns by offering the safety net payments. But these payments are not the answer, and they will not fix the problem. They are a temporary fix that is based on the assumption that eventually the providers will receive payment from insurance companies. It is clear the current system is not working and it must change. That's why we support this bill. We have always believed that the fiscal agent should pay providers in full for services rendered and then seek reimbursement for the associated costs from Medicaid and private insurance on behalf of New York State. If the goals of the state of New York are to, 1, ensure the commercial insurance pays their fair share, 2, to guarantee that EI providers will be paid for the services rendered, and 3, to relieve the burden on municipalities of managing the billing and claiming for EI, this bill achieves all of those objectives, and it will allow early intervention providers to focus all of their time and energy on what matters most, the children. Thank you.
Thank you, Chris. We have a provider from Catskill, Patty Dombrowski, who's an occupational therapist, who'd like to say a few words.
Thank you, Cecilia. Good afternoon. Today, our tiniest and our most vulnerable babies are going without essential services. And this makes me very, very angry. The first 3 years is considered a critical learning period in our babies' lives as their brain is developing the fastest, a concept known as neuroplasticity. For babies who have special needs, life-changing development can be facilitated because of essential services from a specialized early interventionist. This is a critical time, folks. They cannot wait 6 months. Presently, babies are going without services because New York State changed the way providers submit for payment. And this has resulted in non-payment and underpayment of services that have already been rendered. This has been since April. Prior to April, you heard payments were handled through each county. Monthly bill was submitted to the county and paid after approval by the state legislature, by the county legislature. Now in place is a system which does not work. The computer program itself is riddled with bugs and data entry errors. After receiving denials of payments from an insurance company for services rendered in April, May, and June, there was a 5-step process to submit for the payment. On the 5th step, the drop-down box would not work, so you could not put in the data to submit for the payment for the last 4 months. So I'm still waiting for a response from the systems administrator that I sent 3 weeks ago. The number of hours needed to attend to the fiscal part of this is absolutely staggering. Many providers have needed to procure other means of work to support their own children, leaving a void. Services are now no longer available. Being from a rural area in Greene County, it makes it even harder as travel is absolutely essential. But travel, folks, is expensive, and as a provider, I'm responsible for supplying and maintaining my own equipment, my own supplies, developmental toys, teaching literature for families, vehicle, gas, and because I'm considered a private business, I'm taxed at 30 and 33%. I'm not reimbursed for meetings, phone conferences, documentation, paperwork, or continuing education. It's a fee-for-service system, but now that doesn't even work. You must support this legislation by Cecilia Tkaczyk to fix this train wreck, because our babies are being victimized. Thank you.
Thank you, Patty, for being here.